The music you just heard is your invitation to settle in, find a comfortable place to be, take a deep breath, and prepare for our worship service this morning. The music that you hear each morning is actually, it sets to music the words of the Sufi poet Rumi, who says, "Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, wanderer, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here." So good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whether you're here in the sanctuary worshiping with us, whether you are watching from somewhere else and maybe wish you could be here, we're sorry you can't join us. Whether you're here for the first time or the 1,000th, you're welcome here. And it's fall, y'all. My name is Molly Hornbuckle. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm honored to serve as your lay leader this morning. As a longtime member, volunteer, contributor to San Gabriel, I am grateful for this place and for you. I have said before, worship doesn't always work as well as when it does when we come together. So thank you for being here. San Gabriel is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are a movement working for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. Sustaining each other here in community is a part of that work.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Eric Hepburn. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm honored to serve as your pulpiteer. I wanted to communicate with you this morning that I heard the ardent requests of some of you last week for something a little less than 90 or 100 minutes. So we're going to start shooting for 80 and see how that feels. Now here's what I need from you. It's been on the screen for weeks. I've been saying it out loud with some regularity, and I still have some folks who are aiming at 2 paragraphs instead of 2 sentences when they share. So I will own my part, and I'm asking you to own your part. Now, for some of you, like me, if you want to do something in 2 sentences, you got to scribble it down somewhere first. If that's what you need, please do so. So the second thing, here's my bit. My bit of changing it up looks like this. We've been saying at the end of our service, questions more profound than answers. But as you've noticed, sometimes when you throw a question at me at the end, I don't let it sit there. I want to jump in and give you a 7 to 15 minute quality answer to that question. So here's my part of this. When we do feedback at the end of a sermon, I want you to know that not only am I listening, but on Monday, when I do my post game, I listen to the whole thing again, including your questions. But we're going to let your question be there as a question more profound than answers. I'm not going to answer it today. If it's burning a hole in your pocket and you need to send me an email, schedule a phone call because you really need to talk about the answer to that question sooner than later, please do so. But publicly, the answer to that question may come in a later service. It may just be something that sits in your heart until you have a chance to discuss it with your covenant group. So, we're going to try to practice, not just preach, that questions can be more profound than answers. The last note I got for you this fine morning is today is the first version of a new experiment we're going to be running. It's called a mythic service. And the idea is that we're going to do a longer story where the Wonder Box and children's story would usually go, and a shorter sermon message. So we're going to start with a reasonable length story this morning. It should be around a 10 to 12 minute story. But the stories are deep mythic stories. There's something to chew on in there. So we're going to try that once a month, now through December, or now through January. And we'll see how it goes. So let me know what you think. All right. So much for not doing announcements at the beginning of service. Please join me in reciting the words to light our chalice. We light this flame to remind us love is the center. As we grow and connect, mature and deepen, love remains the center. When the light of truth burns all else away, love remains. Let us greet this day in song. Our opening hymn is Gather the Spirit, number 347 in the gray hymnal. Lyrics will be projected. Please rise in body and spirit as you're able. Sometimes we're carrying something on our heart that can prevent us from being fully present. Here in this community, our sharing of these things with each other is the medicine. It is the healing that we need. And like all good medicine, it must be concentrated to be potent. Please aim at 2 strong sentences. So, if you're carrying a sorrow on your heart right now, I invite you to raise your hand for the microphone and share. All right, folks. As promised, we're skipping our wonder box this morning, but I didn't want you to be wonderless, so I brought a prop. You can't have a good mythic story without a little firelight. The Bewitched Princess. There once was a lad called Peter, not a king or a lord, just a man from a hut that he lived in with his father. Peter was bored. He didn't have any great plan, just a sense that he needed to get out into the world, see a few things. He spoke to his father, who understood such a longing. The old man gave him his inheritance and watched his son take the lonely road out of their settlement. It was 30 pieces of silver that Peter now had in his pocket. He loved to feel the weight of it, the bulge, more money than he'd ever seen. That early morning, he walked beyond the world he knew, out towards whatever his destiny was. He may have fantasized about meeting a lover or wrestling a dragon, but he had no wondering at all for what actually transpired. He came across a corpse laying by the side of the road. Maybe a man like him from simple beginnings. He stared at the body for a bit, noticed the crows starting to circle. So he picked up the body and stumbled with it to the next village. He called out to the villagers, "This man deserves a proper burial." But no one seemed to recognize him. Peter had seen this sort of thing before, so he took out his purse of silver and offered to pay for the funeral. Funniest thing, it was a miracle. Suddenly, everyone in the village said, "Oh, they remembered the man. Yes, they'd seen him go out into the fields just that morning." And that if Peter would just relinquish his purse, they would see to the funeral. Well, Peter did. It was quite the send-off with an extended and bounteous wake. The next day, Peter set off on the road out of town, penniless and a little hungover. After a time, a man walked out of the field in the early morning mist and started keeping step with him. Peter barely looked to his left as he knew it was the dead man. Some hours into hard walking and unable to shake his companion, Peter arrived at a town. He'd rarely seen a settlement that big, and its appearance was even more unsettling. Everything was black. The tavern sign was black. The ice on the pond was black. Even the pale children wore black clothes. A shroud had been flung over the place. When he asked about it, Peter was told the town was in mourning, that their princess was bewitched by a mountain spirit who lived up behind the houses, that he was her lover and had possessed her. He used her as a rag doll for his desire, which was the death of young men. The way that this was achieved was like this. The princess would give 3 riddles to potential suitors. If they could answer, they would gain her hand. If not, they were executed. 9 of the brightest men in the village were already dead. You went into the princess's castle and never came out. Only the mountain spirit knew the answers to these strange questions that were not really riddles at all, as you'd never be able to guess them. High stakes indeed for the hand of the princess. Even so, Peter resolved to try. With his ghostly companion, he was offered a room at the castle, and then over the following 3 days, the riddles would be delivered. That night, Peter's companion beckoned him over to the window. They saw the princess floating up towards the mountain and her terrible lover. Over the fields, she floated. Over the swaying pines, she floated. Over the silvery streams, she floated. Up, high above it all in the dank air. The dead man produced from somewhere a set of leathery wings that he fitted with straps to Peter and told him to follow. Precariously, Peter set out. High up on the glowering mountain was the entrance to a cave. Peter saw the princess land there and walk into its darkness. A minute or two later, he landed and tentatively followed. It was a gloomy night with just a few stars brocading the way above him. He crept past an altar, but couldn't make out what was displayed on it. He saw a vigorous-looking man with a white beard seize the princess and run his hands all over her. She, in turn, told him about the arrival of Peter and said that they needed 3 new riddles if they were to kill another young man. The mountain spirit liked this, and he stroked his beard. Think of your father's white horse, all alone in the stable. Tell the suitor to guess what you are thinking. With that, the spirit's eyes flared up red and ravenous. The more death you bring me, the more blood you bring me, the closer we are. What a terrible covenant between lovers. The next day, Peter went to see the princess. She was all in black, pale and quiet, as if she had a secret. She asked him the riddle that is not really a riddle at all. What am I thinking of? You are thinking of your father's white horse, all alone in the stable. It was as if a funeral bell had struck. She shuddered and really looked at him for the first time. She bade him return tomorrow. That night, from his window, he saw her float up toward the mountain and her terrible lover. Over the responsibilities of her role, she floated. Over the dreams of the people, she floated. Over even her identity as a woman, she floated. Up into the arms of her lover in the dark of the cave. Peter's wings were strapped on by his dead companion, and he flew upward, stronger this time, following the princess. He noticed that the cave was a touch brighter. The moon was growing and making it easier to see. He could just about tell that it was not even really a cave, but a large hall deep in the mountain. This time, on the altar, he could see there was a fish. The princess ran to her lover, and he seized her with his hot hands. She told him what had transpired with Peter, and he quickly shot back the next riddle. Think of your father's sword. Tell the suitor to guess what you are thinking. Of course, the next day, Peter had the answer to the riddle. The third night, he flew up to the mountain spirit's hall. It wasn't just moonlight that had started to illuminate the area, but actually sunlight. He could see on the altar next to the fish a wheel of fire turning and sparking bright. Realizing he could be spotted, he hid behind the stone shrine and peered out. Uncomfortably blinking in the rapidly lightening hall, the spirit hissed when he heard the news that Peter had guessed the second riddle. With that, he tugged on his beard. His eyes flashed hot and weird, and he suddenly looked far, far older than he had before. Think of my face. No human can remember something so ancient. Tell the suitor to guess what you are thinking. After that, the lovers were together a while, and then she left, walking by Peter, sheltering behind the altar of the fiery wheel and the fish. When he saw her step into the darkness and float down toward the castle, Peter came out from what was left of the shadows and swiftly decapitated the mountain spirit, placing his furious ancient head in his bag and flying down on those wings the dead man had given him, stronger than ever now. The next day, he was summoned to the princess, and she gave him the third and final riddle. What am I thinking of? You are thinking of exactly this. And with that, he rolled the head of her terrible lover out of his bag to her feet. She rolled and she rocked, gnashed and wailed, but some awful energy passed from her body. When she had recovered, she did indeed accept the hand of Peter in marriage. Soon the shroud was being lifted off the town. The tavern sign was repainted. The ice on the pond melted. The children wore bright colors. The deep silence of this place was replaced by music and chatter. Townsfolk were out on the streets again. What a celebration this would be. Just before the wedding, the dead companion came to Peter. The sweetest thing you can give your wife is this. Prepare her a bath on your wedding night. When the water touches her, she will become a raven and attempt to fly out of the window. Catch the raven, place it back in the bath. When the water touches her, she will become a dove and attempt to fly out of the window. Catch the dove, place it back in the bath. After these animal shapes, behold your beloved, not as a princess anymore, but as a queen. This is my last piece of guidance. From tomorrow, I will have disappeared. The night transpired just as the companion advised. And in the morning, when Peter searched for him, he was gone. But from that day forth, the people had a queen with the battle insights of a raven, the gentleness of a dove, and free from all enchantments.
We take an offering each.
Sorry. No, you can do it. See, when you change up the script, everybody, I'm shook. It is time to sing the children out. That's what we're doing. But it was supposed to be me, not you, so that's my bad. All children and youth wishing to go to their groups are welcome to exit. Everyone else, will you please join me in singing them out? We live in a very intellectualized, psychologized age. So I wonder about the ability of myth and story to help us wrestle with some things that are maybe hard to access from that vantage. And I think one of the things that this story wrestles with is evil. It wrestles with the idea that there are energies in the world that do not wish you well. There are energies other than compassion. There are energies that are harder, that are what we might call from our psychologized vantage point, we might call them toxic things. Now, I think many times on non-mythology Sundays, you will hear me talk about some of these toxic things and extend compassion toward the people who are doing those things, toward the people who are often rightly perceived as perpetuating or embodying the toxicity. What I think is worth struggling with in this story is the idea of possession. Now, I see the looks on your faces. I know because I grew up in an evangelical church that possession has been used to perpetuate as a concept some of the toxicities that we're talking about. So I want to invite you to look at it in a different way. Not to undo damage that was done by people who misused it. Not to do that. Although, for all of you, I wish you healing in all of your journeys. I wish you all of the healing. But I'm not up here to do apologetics. That's not how I roll. I'm up here to struggle with hard truths and to invite you into that struggle. So, let's talk about a way in which possession might be a useful tool for doing hard work and not an excuse for abuse. I know, like me, that every one of you has had a worst day in your life. And I don't mean the time that someone else was mean to you. I don't mean the time that the world was hardest on you. I mean the time that you disappointed yourself. I mean the time when you showed up in a way that in the rearview mirror, you're like, that wasn't me. I want to disown that moment. I want to erase it from my past. You know a deep truth in that moment looking in the rearview mirror, and I want to reinforce it for you. You are not the worst thing you have ever done. Let's say it again. You are not the worst thing that you've ever done. And that intuition that whatever was going on with you that day, that wasn't really you, that's not excuse making. Although some people will tell you that it is. And it's not trying to let yourself off the hook. You know that hook ain't going anywhere, no matter what you say to yourself. Here's the truth I want you to wrestle with. You were, in that moment, possessed by an energy you did not know how to manage. But that energy wasn't you. It wasn't the deep resonant core of who you are. It wasn't the part of you that was able to look in the mirror and acknowledge that's not who I am, that's not how I want to be. How do I make sure that doesn't happen again? How do I make sure I don't go there again? The part of you that can recognize that is the deeper you. Are you tracking with me this morning? Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. Now, it's unpopular, and I talk about it too much, but we're going to do it again. We're going to turn the corner. What is true for you is true for everyone. What differs is the depth, depravity, expansion, and frequency of bad days. You have known some people who have had what can only be described as bad lives based on the frequency of bad days they have. And once again, I'm not talking about the days that other people were kind to them. I'm not talking about the days that they were traumatized. I'm talking about the days when they inflicted that on others as the only method they could find for blowing out dark energies they couldn't contend with. We see it in our politics today. That's why we're having this conversation today. I left the pulpit last week and I was a little shook. I was a little shook because it wasn't the fact of the feedback that the sermons were going long, but there was an edge to the energy. There was an edge to the energy about it that got me curious. Talked to my wife about it. I meditated about it. How far are we from the election? If you pause for a minute, close your eyes, you can feel it. You can feel the jangle of anxiety. You can feel the jangle of uncertainty. The sense that maybe your safety isn't where you need it to be. I don't want us to hide from that energy. Courage is about noticing the fear. Courage is about noticing the threat and keeping your eyes open. We all want to go hide for the next 6 weeks. I get it. There's that part in each of us that's just like, if I could take a nap that lasted exactly that long, I might say yes. You feel me? Yeah? All right. But here's what I want to put out there. I want you to notice that this story was not about Peter. This story was about the people of that town. They needed a leader who could bring them out of darkness and into healthy and joyful community. The path to that was littered with sacrifice and the confronting of hard and dark energies. That's the path that they had to walk to get there. It wasn't magic. And there were some things that were out of left field. Peter was asked to do some things that he probably didn't understand. Wait. My wife is going to turn into 2 birds and I have to grab them and put them in the bathtub? I mean, the conversation could have gone that way, right? Peter could have been like, wait, dude. I know you had magical leather wings and the whole deal, but come on, man. Like what? Wait, she's going to turn into a bird? She's going to turn into a bird and I have to catch the bird before it makes it out the window. I don't even know if I can. How am I going to catch a bird? Do I get to wear the wings for this part of the show? Right? Like you can hear what the anxious brain would do with this story. But you know what else the anxious brain would have done? The anxious brain would have walked by the guy on the side of the road. That's not my problem. The anxious brain would have taken the dead guy off the shoulder, left him in the middle of the village and been like, I'm out, y'all. Your problem. You're a dead villager, not mine. What's the Bible say? Am I my brother's keeper? As much as you want to dodge it, as much as I want to dodge it, the answer has always been a resounding yes. I'm going to let you in on another secret. There ain't no DNA-based life on this planet that ain't your brother or your sister or your sibling. None of it. Even the ones you kill to stay alive are your siblings. Do you approach their deaths with the kind of gratitude and reverence that's appropriate to that sacrifice? Probably not. But as y'all know, I like to say that's why we come to church. We come to church to remind ourselves that in that sacred sacrifice that happens every day so that we might go on, there are things worth being reverent about. There are things worth honoring. And it is in the honoring of each of those small things that we walk toward a world worthy of handing to our children. You want to know why the sickness out there is rampant? So that leaders who you think ought not to be in the ring are in the ring? It is a culture that has forgotten these things. It is a culture that takes for granted its ability and its willingness and its entitlement to exploitation, to dehumanization. We can't fix it, folks. We got to heal it. And I want you to feel in your ears, in your brain, in your heart, in your gut, the difference between those two words, fix and heal. So, maybe one of these days, I'll have some insights that I want to share with you about the origins of evil or some of those other great metaphysical topics. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to save that for a day when we're living better. Because I think it's a luxury to worry about ultimate ends and ultimate beginnings and all that fun theological stuff when the work that's in front of us is so plain and so urgent. When the work that is in front of us is so plain and so urgent, it would be misguided to worry about that other stuff that hovers out there on the edge of eternity. Have you found a way to cultivate the compassion in your own heart for each and every one of your neighbors? Have you found a way to do the ritual that helps them exercise their dark energies? You notice he could have blamed the princess, right? He could have slain the heroine. He could have said, oh, she's under the sway of those dark energies. I might as well decapitate her too and name myself king. But you can sense when I say it, can't you? You can sense that that's just a perpetuation of the dark energy. If the story had made that turn, you know that Peter could not have become a just king. He couldn't have become the leader the people needed without acknowledging the humanity of the princess and believing that she could and deserved to be liberated from those dark energies. So Peter is an instrument in the story. The princess is the main character, and the people of the town are the point. The community is the point. The lines go something like this: that was not what was most unsettling. The whole town, everything was black. The tavern sign was black. The ice on the pond was black. Even the pale children wore black clothes. Does it feel like that some days around here? The tavern sign was black. The ice on the pond was black. I'm not inviting you to banish the bleakness. I'm inviting you to feel it. It is part of this moment that we're in. And facing hard things doesn't mean pretending everything's all right when it's not. That's not what it means. Our desire to only feel the good half of feelings is part of our problem. That's another topic I keep coming back to. That's all right. There's a famous parable of I don't know, it's famous. Preacher comes, guest preacher, comes to a church, delivers a sermon. Everybody's like, oh, that's the best sermon ever. They invite him back. Next month he comes, delivers the same sermon. People are a bit confused. They're like, what's going on here? I don't know. Should we try again? Sure, we'll try one more time. They invite him back, third time, same sermon. Somebody stops him at the back of the room and says, man, what's up with that? And he's like, y'all started practicing it yet? Oh. So there's my part, and there's your part. I hate to tell you this, y'all. I'm going to know when it's changing. I don't mean to come at you like I'm pretending to have a pipeline to the omniscient sentience of an almighty God. That's not really how my theology goes. But I do believe that when we open our hearts and our senses to one another, we can tell where each other's at. We can sense when there's dark energies afoot, and we can sense when people are walking into the room a little lighter than they were last week. So I trust myself to know when it's time to change horses, and it ain't time yet. I can feel it out there among y'all. Molly Hornbuckle here behind me asked me a question after one of my early sermons here. She said, you said that the anger and negativity was, I said, made the argument in a sermon that it was a result of unmetabolized grief and sorrow. She said, well, how do you metabolize it? I said, that is a fantastic question, Molly. We should just sit with that. Questions more profound than answers. There we go. Yep, I'm going to let that one sit. I mean, well, if you're going to swing at something, swing for the fences, right? So I will, in my waning moments here, swing at that for a minute. Stephen Jenkinson tells a story about getting a group of men who had lost spouses and loved ones together, and it's a longer story, but he makes the joke that it's ended up being a group for men who didn't want to be in a group for men. And they ended up renaming it Sad School. He said that these men who had agreed to get together for 6 weeks of therapy after all suffering catastrophic losses, they ended up staying together, meeting once a week for 18 months. Because the world had not taught them, their fathers, their mothers, no one had taught them how to be sad. They didn't know what to do with that feeling, so they worked real hard at transmuting that sadness into anger or into other emotions. Emotions that were more socially acceptable for them as men to have and to express. But you see, the transmutation of sadness into anger is an incomplete one. It is a forestalling action, not a processing action. As the Buddhists teach, the only way to let an emotion pass is to experience it fully without resistance. To surrender to the feeling. Now, it's counterintuitive for this type A go-get-'em culture of ours for me to tell you that the key to progress is surrender. That doesn't quite feel right, does it? Shouldn't we do something more proactive? Shouldn't we do something more assertive? Yes, you should. You should assertively surrender. You should do it without a question mark in your heart about whether or not what you're surrendering to is bigger than you. This thing that we do together is bigger than you. This thing called life that we understand so poorly, yet love so much. This thing called life, no matter what other labels you like to put on it or avoid putting on it, is bigger than us, and you are part of it. It does not belong to you. You belong to it. You are an instantiation of life. Life is not your treasured possession. So the question is, what does life want and need from you? What does life want and need from you? Well, like Peter in our story, life wants you to stay open enough to answer small, hard calls when they happen as you're walking the lonely road out of your settlement. I'm standing up here afraid because I don't do that. The number of homeless people in need that I drive past in my car every day and just, I got places to be. I got things to do. I do it every day. We are trained, we are deeply ingrained to close our eyes and ears and minds and hearts to the suffering around us. And it is part of the only thin and narrow path that leads to help for us to break this terrible, terrible habit. Now, I'm not saying that that means you stop your car every time. We all know that balance is a thing. In all things, there is a balance and there is moderation. But there is also, I am closing myself off to this because I don't want to feel it. And if I ignore it, I feel it less. But it's not transmuted, folks. The sadness is still there. It's still seeping into you every time you turn your eye away from another human being in need. And if you can own that honestly, then the few times when it really is your turn to step up and help, you might be ready. Not every time is yours. Don't mishear me. Don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm asking you to martyr yourself on the pyre of the world's troubles. But I'm asking you to recognize that if you shut off all the world's troubles as though they're not your fault or your problem or your concern, that only leaves you the way out of fighting. Eckhart Tolle says it right. What you resist persists. If you show up to the ecological and political and social and cultural battles ready to hurt somebody else, then you're just perpetuating the cycle of hurt and violence. I wish it were otherwise. But this battle isn't that kind of battle, and it only gets won one way. It only gets transformed into a different kind of confrontation with the subtleness of showing up with some love and some compassion, and recognizing that those dark energies that possess some of us from time to time aren't who we are. That none of us are defined by our worst day.
We take an offering each week to sustain this spiritual home and to support the work of our fellowship. If you're visiting for the first time, would you please fill out a card, a visitor card, put it in the basket or drop it off at the welcome table. And we welcome back to the piano Judy Mayo. We're glad you're here, Judy.
So today I'm playing Simple Gifts, which is an American folk tune. And as a birthday gift, I sent my daughter the words to it, and she said, I ought to tell you. So quickly, 'tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the garden of love and delight.
Thank you, Judy. Sometimes we're called to add our voices to the chorus. Sometimes we're called to speak aloud a message resonating in our hearts. Our words are medicine. Please keep the medicine potent and leave space for all. Aim at 2 strong sentences. If you're experiencing a call to reflect, respond, or resonate with today's message or story, please raise your hand for the microphone.
It might be 3 sentences. Does that one count? Okay. So I thought it was interesting how the story focused on the spirit being very ancient and that his face was ancient. And I think it may have also been a reflection of how we need to process our past in order to be able to move on as a community.
Hey everybody. I really liked this particular one, your message today, mainly because the idea of possession, because I've seen in my own life where people get possessed by obsessions, whether they be ideological or otherwise, where people are made enemies of each other when they should be at least neighbors, if not friends. So this one was unusually good.
Eric, I applied your message to the work that I'm doing, helping our unsheltered obtain IDs, and I continue to be denied. They continue to be denied. And so I'm kind of praying for those wings and the answers.
Thank you for sharing. If you are called to share an announcement with your siblings, now is the time. I'll go first. I will be out for the next 2 weeks. Next weekend, you will have the lovely and talented Nancy Moan Bernard doing our water ceremony. She's a UU seminarian. We're going to have a good water ceremony next week. The week after, our very own Chuck Collins and Clementine Masenji will be doing the show. Clementine is a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. You'll hear more about that. She and I and Chuck and Andrew Ritchie, who's a filmmaker working on a film project with her, had a meeting this last week. Really enjoyed talking with her. I think you guys are in for a real treat on October 6th. I will be working this week to try and get the connections groups finally solidified. What I ask of you in that process, if I send you an email and it makes a request of you to send me available times, whatever it is, please try and be as detailed as I'm asking you to be in the email. Don't do that thing where you scan the first 2 lines and then hit reply without really understanding what I'm asking. And if you could respond sooner than later, we can get this resolved and hopefully get connection groups rolling by the time sort of October gets here. So that's my goal. Thank you for your patience. And just a quick reminder, we have new member orientation at noon in the fellowship house today. I will be there. I look forward to speaking with our potential new members this afternoon. Other announcements?
Quick note on water communion next Sunday, in case you're new or haven't been here in a while. Please bring a small amount of water representative to you of either summer travels, someplace close by, something that means something. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Billy Adams, and I'd like to announce it last Sunday, so I want to say it again. The Habitat team is having their fall in gathering because fall is a wonderful time in Texas for flowers and plants and butterfly migrations and everything else. So we're going to hang out at 10 o'clock on Tuesday on the deck, and anybody's welcome to join us. We probably won't do much physical work. We'll do some catching up and talking about what we want to do this fall. So if you have any questions, please look for me after the service. And if you would just like to come and join us on 10 o'clock, and actually, if you would like a tour of the garden so I could you'd get an idea of what in the world we're talking about when we say the hutto bed. I can meet you here at 9:30. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob Berthold. I'm the president of the board this year.
Thank you, Rob.
That really wasn't the announcement. The announcement is we are still looking for a treasurer to replace John Shaw, who is on the verge of leaving. We've been looking for a while. This is a big job. This is the person who pays the bills, makes the deposits of all of our money, helps chart, keeps the board informed of what our financial situation is. It does require time commitment. If you feel like you want to serve this congregation at that capacity, we invite you to join us. If this is a job you feel like you can't take on, but you can think of somebody else who might be a good person to do that, we are all ears. So as a form of networking, I'm asking for each of your help to suggest somebody in this congregation who might help fill this very important role for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Hopefully somebody be so inspired. 3 quickies. We recognize that we are on the land of the Tonkawa. And in the Austin Statesman, there was an article about the Tonkawa have recently reclaimed Sugarloaf Mountain. That article is posted on our bulletin board for your review. Also this month, the Texas, I think it was last month, Texas Monthly magazine recognized the Karawanda indigenous tribe down in Corpus Christi, and that article is there for you as well. Slowly, our indigenous people in our areas are reclaiming land or artifacts, and so I just want to keep you apprised as part of our racial justice and racial equity that we support our BIPOC folks. Powwow, Chuck, powwow is September 28? Next Saturday, and the timing? 11 to 5, so you are welcome to do that. If you need to check if your voter registration is still current and valid, please see myself or Pat. Do not assume that it is. There has been purging of the rolls, and so we want to make sure that you can continue to vote. And lastly, we talked about Peace Minsenje coming. A year ago, we installed our Peace Pool. It's International Peace Day this week. And so Mr. Eric mentioned that we are instruments. And so I remind you that we are all instruments of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Oh, Lou.
Thank you, Eric. When Michelle stood up, I thought I didn't have to make an announcement because we both share a commitment to the social justice team here in this congregation. And so what I was reminded after listening to her announcements that she left out the fact that the social justice team will be meeting next Sunday, immediately after the service, to plan for this coming year. We've got a budget allocation the board has given us. We need to decide how we're going to spend that money, what kind of projects, activities, programs that we want to support this coming year. We've started a new church year. So we welcome anyone who has energy and enthusiasm and feels motivated that the mission of this congregation needs to be around social justice issues to join us. A lunch will be provided for free.
Thank you, Lou. All right, last section here. It's time for gratitudes, folks. I just want to say, I try to thank them individually whenever the chance happens. Thank you, Molly, for rescuing me from myself. I try to help people individually, but I want to do it collectively this morning. The amount of volunteer dedication and hours and showing up that make sure that there's coffee in the pots in the morning and the grounds are taken care of and the board meetings and the social justice, just everybody that you're surrounded by puts so much love and attention and time and energy into this place. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful because it makes my job so much fun and makes me feel supported in trying to do and invite you into work that is hard work. But I also want to acknowledge all the behind the scenes hard work that makes the other hard work possible. So just thank you to everybody, and you know who you are if you show up and carry water for this congregation. I just want you to know that you are seen and appreciated deeply for your commitment and your energies.
Hi, my name is Misty. To go off that, I want to tell you, when I'm driving from homeschool to homeschool thing with my kids, we're in the car for hours during the week. We will use you as examples, I'll say to the girls. Be more like Chuck. Be more like Linda. She's full of joy. And sometimes we forget your name. Be like the guy that is the president now. And that really is happening for us constantly. It's the little things that even for my kids watching, they are taking on, and I'm grateful. So.
Thank you and amen. For all this and more, we are deeply grateful. Our second hymn is Love Will Guide Us, number 131 in the gray hymnal. The lyrics will be projected. Please rise and body your spirit as you're able.
As all of us wanderers and wanderers prepare to return to the world, we remind ourselves through this affirmation to carry our work to every corner of our lives. Please join me in the call and response. The doctrine of this church is love. The quest of truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace. To seek knowledge in freedom. To serve humanity in fellowship. To the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another. Now join me in reciting the words as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame to remind us love is the center. As we explore and rest, engage and heal, love remains the center. When all we can see is cold ashes, love remains.
I leave you with this as benediction. May you find questions more profound than answers, play more proficient than mastery, vulnerability more powerful than invincibility, supplication more productive than control, and a service that lasted exactly 75 minutes. Go in peace.